Directors, Susan Thronson.
Hi, everybody. So yes, I brought a little Palm Springs to Washington, D.C. with my, So hi, as the voice of God, Rick said, I'm Susan Thronson, and I use she and her pronouns. And I can tell you, it is the privilege of a lifetime to serve as the chair of the PFLAG National Board of Directors, especially during our 50th year anniversary. For those of you who haven't heard it, I turned to my local PFLAG trans family support group in Bethesda, Maryland, when my then teenage child came out. And it was there that I found belonging in a community of transgender advocates and family members who shared their experiences with me. And their generosity changed my life, and by extension, my family's life. And I know that that is a common and shared story in this room. This community moved me from being a passive ally to an informed parent to an activist, creating a just, caring, and affirming world for LGBTQ plus people and all of those who love them. It is a privilege to serve as the first parent of a transgender person to serve as board chair. And to carry on the legacies of PFLAG's founder, Jean Manford, and PFLAG's first national president, Adele Starr. Together with our CEO, Brian Bond, the National Board's mandates are to meet today's needs and build a resilient future for PFLAG's next generations. So over the past few years, we've extended our reach more broadly and deeply. We've expanded our programs, refined our strategic priorities, especially to center on diversity, inclusion, and equity in everything we do across the organization, whether at the national level or in our chapter network. We came forward boldly to protect the hard-fought protections gained through federal, state, and local advocacy. And as a result, we have diversified our financial sources of funding. Today, through the conscientious efforts of so many, PFLAG is ready and able to respond to today's urgent and important work. I know that across the country, LGBTQ plus people, and especially transgender and gender nonconforming youth, and those of us who love them, are struggling to make our neighborhoods, our communities in which we live, just even see our shared humanity. Sometimes we can do this through sharing our stories, but other times it requires a more forceful action to show visibly our support, our solidarity, and to push back. That is why, for the first time in PFLAG's history, we're serving as plaintiffs in these 4 lawsuits in 3 states, Texas, Missouri, thank you, Brian, and North Carolina. And to make it clear that PFLAG will always advocate for transgender youth, their families, and healthcare. I'm just going to ad-lib a little bit because in our history, we talk about PFLAG love, but our founders, and particularly Jean Manford, was an activist. And don't forget, these families were fighting for the lives of their children with HIV/AIDS and an administration and elected officials who ignored us. So we need to continue that part of our culture and embolden not just advocacy, but activism. When I share my family's story about why PFLAG is so important to us, I intentionally tell it from my perspective without revealing a whole lot of details about my son's experience. After all, he's 30 years old now. And I respect that his is his story to tell. But yet, as a parent 15 years ago, as he struggled with emerging and unrevealed gender dysphoria, we lurched from one behavioral health crisis to another. These were the loneliest, most terrifying times, and as his mother, I didn't yet know what help he needed. His coming out was a call to action for his father and me. As are most parents, we were cautious about medical interventions and wanted to learn everything we could about how to fully support our child. We turned to a multidisciplinary specialty practice at the Children's Hospital, and together, with their counsel and expertise, we made informed decisions about our child's needs. The essential health care that my son received saved his life. And it came without fear of interference or retribution from any government, as it should be for anyone, everywhere. This type of medically necessary care is critical for families to be able to access it when they need it. And also important for families, support to trans and non-binary kids of all ages. And that is why I am pleased to present today's chapter award to PFLAG's Fort Collins, Colorado. Fort Collins chapter is thriving. It offers a diverse array of events and programmings that lean into PFLAG's mission of support, education, and advocacy for LGBTQ people and those who love them. They have regular support meetings, as well as monthly events, including participating in Colorado's Lobby Day at the state capitol, educational planning panels such as Figuring It Out and Trans 101 for parents and allies, and a Mental Health Matters event with the local school district. In addition to continuing support groups for LGBTQ plus people, parents, families, and allies, they also have a subgroup called Transforming Families, specifically for parents, families, and allies of trans loved ones. All of their important work has been made possible through a highly successful fundraising effort and a significant expansion of chapter visibility thanks to their newly branded and updated website. You really are doing it all. And get this, here's the punchline. They have successfully increased their membership 700%. So you can tell why all of us at PFLAG should be so proud of what Fort Collins, Colorado's chapter has done. And here next to me is Reggie Johnson, their president. Reggie, thank you.
Thank you. I just want to say that I'm extremely honored and very humbled by this award, especially in this 50th anniversary year. I would like to say that the award is for my kids, for Tara, for Mist, for Amaryllis, and for my grandkids, for being who they are. This award is also for all of you out there who are part of the LGBTQ community, who are brave enough to be who you are. This award is for you. Shouldn't give me the award.
All right, now let's. Oops. Thank you, Reggie.
Oh. All right, this award is also for our chapter, and particularly the parents, relatives, and the allies in our chapter. Let me tell you a quick story. We have a dad who's a pastor who literally shook his finger in the face of his trans son and said, "I will never." And yet he came around, he opened his mind, he opened his heart, and he's very affirming. And at my suggestion, he wrote a book about his experience. So how many of you out there are dads of transgender kids? Raise your hands high and proud. Thank you. Thank you for being there. And here's the challenge. The reason that Matt wrote a book is because there aren't very many dad books out there. So you dads that just raise your hands, make friends with Arvind that was here yesterday, and maybe he'll help you write your book. And you can get on the banned books list too, maybe. All right, one quick story. You might say, why Colorado? Because Colorado is known currently as a haven state, and we appreciate all of the families that have moved to our state. And we're helping as best we can with the resources that we have to help. But I can tell you in our chapter alone, Northern Colorado, we have families from at least 10 other states that have moved in the last year. So the story of Colorado real quickly, 1992, Colorado was known as the hate state. We had all of our constituents, the Coloradoans, voted for an amendment to the Constitution that made it, and I got to read this so that I can make sure I get it right. Wait, I lost it. Anyway, all right. So that's because you're not in charge of the agenda. All right, so it said, so it's a double negative. It prohibited the state from enacting anti-discrimination protections for gay, lesbians, and bisexuals. By implication, that would be transgender today. But basically, it made discrimination legal. It was awful. That was 1992. 1994, our chapter was started as a response to that. And so I applaud all the people of our chapter over the last 29 years who have done this. 1996, fortunately, the United States Supreme Court said that's against the US Constitution. So what they do if this happens in your state is they just draw a little line through the amendment, but it does not take it out of your Constitution. So Colorado is on a cusp. So if the United States Court now, Supreme Court now comes back and says, no, it is illegal to be transgender, gay, whatever, or have these protections, automatically they just erase that little line out of our Constitution, and in Colorado it will be legal to discriminate. So we are in this fight with every state here. It is just as important to us as every single state here. So we are in this fight to create a caring, just, and affirming world, as all of you are, and I appreciate all of you for doing that. And I'm hoping that I'm working myself out of a job so that in the next 50 years, our kids will just be kids. Yay.
Hello. Well, I am one of the people in charge of the program, and I was back there saying, take your time. Hello, everyone. I'm very short. And my name is Liz Owen. I'm the Director of Communications here at PFLAG National. I've had the privilege of serving in this role since 2011, and it's wonderful to be here with you. And my pronouns are she and her. I'm sorry. I am very honored to be here today to present the Morty Manford Volunteerism Award, which is named for the prominent LGBTQ plus activist and the son of PFLAG founder Jean Manford. This award is given in recognition and appreciation of an LGBTQ plus person who serves their local community as a committed, passionate volunteer, leaning into PFLAG's mission of support, education, and advocacy. This year's recipient is Michael Note. Michael and I became acquainted through Facebook, as many folks do, more than 10 years ago. And believe it or not, as close as we've gotten over the years, and we have, this event is the first time we've met in person. Yeah, hang out there. You're not going to want people to watch your face while I'm talking about you. I have been where you are, and those pictures were not helpful to me in any way. Soak it in while you're in a seat. I trust you. Trust me. So Michael created Have a Gay Day back in 2011 as an online space for people to not only find connection and support, but also to spread cheer following the death of an LGBTQ plus teen. The community raised $17,000 for the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. And from that point, the Have a Gay Day community grew. I just have to ask, how many of these the people in this room are on Facebook? How many of you follow Have a Gay Day and see that? Yeah, I thought so. So back in 2016, Michael established Have a Gay Day as a nonprofit organization based in Dayton, Ohio, with a mission to create a safe environment for the purpose of equality, education, and support of the LGBTQ community and its allies. Under Michael's direction, in the last year alone, Have a Gay Day has reached more than 33 million people per month on social media. I feel like I shouldn't say that loud because I will be out of a job in 5 minutes. They have distributed more than 86,000 pounds of food, delivered over 3,000 packages of food, personal care, and household cleaning items, gave away more than 6,000 pounds of pet food. I know, I love that part. All those queer dogs, thank you for that. And grew their community center in size from 2,200 square feet to 3,400 square feet. Some of it with that walk-in freezer y'all been working on, right? Yeah. In 2022, Michael also launched a billboard campaign dedicated to broadcasting positive messages to LGBTQ plus individuals in partnership with PFLAG National, but he brought the partnership to us, not the other way around. It was his baby. Michael made sure that digital billboards in over 500 locations carried positive and affirming messages more than 1.7 million times. Yeah. Now, I've been spitting out a lot of facts, but here's my favorite one. Have a Gay Day only hired their first paid staffer part-time this year. And my favorite fact, it's not Michael. Nope, he is still the volunteer executive director, while he is working full-time as a customer service rep for a FedEx office and as a caregiver for his parents. When does Michael sleep, you might wonder? Never, ever. So it is my absolute pleasure and privilege and honor. See, aren't you glad you're sitting in the seat and not standing up here? To Michael note of Have a Gay Day.
I think you have this backwards.
Did I?
You do.
Sorry.
Glad I sat back down. Whew. I rewrote this a couple times just because it's so amazing to stand in front of people that you've always looked up to. In the room, watching the stories and the news and everything that's happened, to be here in front of you all is incredible. Standing before you all today, I must tell you of the countless volunteers and community members around the world which have amplified my desire to give back. Like Morty Manford, I couldn't be here today without the sacrifices so many have made in the community of over 1.4 million people that are the essential part of the Have a Gay Day family. I had created a memorial page dedicated to Jamie Rodemeyer. I used to go to schools and talk about bullying. I was advocating for change at every level, story after story of people going through so much in the community. Some that made the news, many that didn't. I spent time one night going through a Tumblr page and wished there was a place online that could be better. Maybe I could create a space that when someone didn't feel like they couldn't find love and kindness, they could find it there. Have a Gay Day was born on February 25th, 2012. Rainbows, unicorns, conversations, and cheesecake. A play on words, a reclaiming, and a smiley face that wasn't professional but put in so much work. As time went on, I kept listening to the community and kept growing who I was, and then Havagate Aid became a charity to grow the space and the advocacy when it was needed. You may have heard about the billboards in partnership with PFLAG National, but you should know also that that thought came from sitting in a school board room listening to parents talk against children in the community for 4 hours without pause. Your imagination to change the world grows by leaps and bounds when you see people acting out against others. And after 4 hours, you imagine some crazy things. As we have grown from a social media presence to a charity, we have focused on the voids of service, the needs of the community, and to never be louder than the quietest voices of need in the room that should be amplified, protected, and celebrated. I think the one thing that I would like to convey the loudest is a reminder to remember so many people in the community that can't authentically say who they are, even in rooms that many believe fully support them. In the community that we serve, there are so many things that we see, but so many things that people go through that aren't always visible. When you find someone or something that limits the love of the kindness, remember it only takes one person to create a better community for everyone. I was in line today getting lunch, and someone said, there was a chapter that's so big and we're so small. And it hit me. Connected together, we're changing the world. It doesn't matter how big you are or how small you are. The advocacy that you do today matters. It may not always be in your mind that you're changing the world, but each of us is. In comparison, there is no comparison because it's meaningful and it changes lives to one person and that matters. So no matter how big you are, no matter how small you think you are, to some people, you are the greatest thing that's ever happened to their life. To the whole PFLAG family, I am deeply honored to be a recipient of the Morty Manford Volunteerism Award, and also I hope to take that legacy and amplify it for years to come. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Now we'll welcome Susan back up to the podium.
I was just sort of glowing in the
I don't blame you. Same.
It's so nice to be a fangirl. So thank you, Liz, and incredible, Michael. So Paul Spivey is an exemplary National Board of Directors member. For over 30 years, Paul has been dedicated to the nonprofit sector, serving as an executive, a board member, and a recruiter for organizations that focus on mental health, substance abuse, homelessness, criminal justice, all areas that affect the LGBTQ+ community. Paul is a living example of courageous love in action, which makes him the right person to introduce this afternoon's plenary. Please join me in welcoming Paul Spivey.
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
I'd say, all right. It's a great day, great people. It's all wonderful. And I say, as a proud PFLAG board member, I'm so pleased that PFLAG provides us a forum to share our stories, to learn from each other, to protect each other, and to fight for a more just world, leading with love. I represent an Afro-Latino family featuring 2 trans daughters and a cisgender jock. You know, the new all-American family, one might say. Yeah. There you go. Yeah. When my wife and I envisioned having kids, we imagined them growing up happy, safe, and protected, free from discrimination, and able to adjust comfortably in society and thrive. Having LGBTQ plus kids is not what we expected or imagined. We worried about their vulnerability, their safety, and the ostracism they would face. All parents learn from the unexpected. I know you all do. Our unexpected was staring us right in the face. In our ongoing journey, we have experienced a range of emotions, moving from confusion and discomfort to disorientation to resistance, ultimately to acceptance and to affirmation, always with love. As a poppy, no journey could be more rewarding and humbling. My journey has been full of learning. I must admit, while I did not harbor ill will towards the LGBTQ community, I certainly was full of my own biases and misinformation. I have deep respect for my kids' courageous, sometimes frightening, and often challenging journeys towards self-love, self-acceptance, and safety. Our oldest demonstrated a deep love for musical theater instead of sports. And by age 7, we suspected our child might be gay. We supported the love for musical theater and provided protection. For example, we prevented him from joining the Boy Scouts, whose policies we believe to be anti-LGBTQ. After our experience with our eldest child, when our middle child came along, we believed the child was gay at a young age. There was no need for an official coming out party. We knew day one. Day one. Okay, we thought, we have 2 gay sons. I must admit, I felt some relief and probably a touch of bias when our third child turned out to have an interest in sports and presumably seemed cisgender. So I'm still on my own personal journey. When my oldest came out to us as a gay man at the age of 17, there was a family celebration for this largely anticipated news. However, an overwhelming, I say this has been really hard for us, an overwhelming family challenge emerged when my oldest then outed my middle child as transgender. We eventually came to learn that this breach of confidentiality between our 2 oldest children occurred because our oldest was feeling vulnerable and insecure about being transgender as well. Information that had not been shared with us as of yet. So having 2 trans daughters has proven very challenging in so many ways. On top of this, having our 2 trans daughters not get along because of the a lot of our little one just went off to college. He's like free from all the drama in the house. Okay. So having 2 trans daughters who don't get along because of the unique ways that they express their identities has been heartbreaking, but we trust that in time, as they become more self-assured and secure, their relationship will improve. All of my kids are different, including our daughters, who could not be more unalike in their representation of their gender identities. One has undergone gender-affirming surgeries, one has not. One uses she pronouns, while the other identifies as genderqueer and uses the pronouns she or they. One's gender expression is female, the other presents fluidly, but always with a feminine touch, and is a proud and bold LGBTQ plus activist. She's an actor who will only accept trans roles. Yeah. So as the parent of 3 kids of color, I worry about them all, but especially our 2 trans daughters. But I am invigorated and inspired by their courage, and admittedly fatigued a lot. But wouldn't have it any other way. And it is for these reasons and so many more that I'm eager to hear from our plenary guests today. Their voices are critical in the fight to provide care to our trans kids and to trans population of all ages. I'm really pleased to present the moderator for our panel, Charlotte Clymer, who hails from Texas, a state where we need a lot of work done, of course. There are many impressive labels that can apply to Charlotte. transgender activist, writer, military veteran, and she was listed in Forbes magazine as 40 under 40. But most importantly, she's a humanist, and she had the courage to come out on Twitter at the age of 28 in a very public way. And during that time, she said, no one should have to prove their humanity. She said, while I'm not perfect, at least I have something real. She said, I still may be imperfect, but I am perfectly me. And we're pleased that she's perfectly she, making her important contribution to society. So we present the recipient of the 2023 GLAAD Media Award for Excellence in Communication, who we know is going to lead a panel of excellent dialogue. So Charlotte, if you can come forward and the panelists can come forward, that would be great.
Okay, and I guess we will go on.
Should I be introducing or? Oh, I apologize. I'm so sorry. Folks, it is my great honor to introduce Admiral Rachel Levine and Dr. Jesse Ehrenfeld. Goodness gracious, how are y'all doing today? I just want to say on a personal note really quickly before we get started that I love this room. Ever since I came out, I've been estranged from my family. And that is sadly a very common experience in the queer community. There are a lot of folks who have had to create families of their own, chosen family in the LGBTQ community. And to see so many parents and relatives of LGBTQ children, specifically trans children, is just such an honor and a treat. And I cannot tell you how much I appreciate the love and courage and intentionality that is present in this space. And it just means a lot. So thank you so much for just showing up every day as you do. It really does mean the world. I think in your own bubble sometimes it can be easy to forget that, but what you're doing is so critical. And it really does mean the world, not just to your own loved ones, but to all of us who are observing the love that you give to your loved ones. So thank you so much for that. I will say really quickly, I am a very proud trans woman, but I am not a medical expert. I am not a scientist. And I think in this day and age when there are, I would say, a lot of folks who eschew subject matter experts, let's just put it diplomatically, there's never been a greater need to rely on experts and say very openly when we don't know something. I think one of the most courageous things we can all say is, I don't know, and defer to people who do know. And that's why it is such a treat to have two of the foremost medical experts in this space today with us, Admiral Levine and Dr. Ehrenfeld. Their work is incredible. Yes, please, please. So we're going to take full advantage of their expertise this afternoon. And I'm so sorry for botching y'all's intros. I apologize for that. I did not get the run of show. I did not read the run of show correctly. My apologies for that. Like a typical millennial, I am going to read notes from my phone. So I hope you're not offended by that. So let's start with this first question to both of you. And Admiral Levine, I'm going to start with you. What do you see as the greatest threat to LGBTQ health right now?
So I think that the greatest threat that we're seeing that we all have experienced are the politically and ideologically motivated attacks that we're seeing in many states across the country to the LGBTQI plus community, especially to vulnerable transgender and non-binary youth, their families, and even their medical providers. I think it's critically important to understand is that gender affirming care is essential health care. It is medical care. Gender affirming care is mental health care. Actually, gender affirming care is literally suicide prevention care.
That's right.
It is based upon significant medical research, which continues to evolve. It has a robust standard of care, which was just revised by WPATH in September of 2022. And it is practiced by medical professionals, much of which in fantastic children's hospitals or LGBTQI+ health centers across the country. And so I feel it is critically important for us all to continue to advocate for some of the most vulnerable in our community and advocate for those children, for their families, and their medical providers.
I can agree more. I can agree more. Dr. Ehrenfeld?
I'm happy to answer that question because it's an important one, but I'm going to take a moment to tell you who I am.
Yes,
Because I think that might be helpful. So, Jesse Ehrenfeld, I'm the president of the American Medical Association, but I am not like your typical president of the American Medical Association because I'm the first out president of the American Medical Association. And I've also been to PFLAG meetings with my parents. So I can't tell you how meaningful it is to be on this stage with two incredible advocates talking about health and what's happening in our communities. And I really want to thank PFLAG for hosting us today because this is a really challenging moment. We are seeing attacks on our communities. We are seeing government legislative overreach in a growing number of places, and these are the greatest threats to the health of our community. And when I think about the challenges, I think about all of the behavioral health issues that are made worse when you feel like an outsider, because your government tells you you are an outsider. Your government tells you it's not okay to get health care that we know leads to better health outcomes. That is the greatest threat, and that is why we must stand together and continue to make sure that we do not accept the attack on science, that we do not accept legislative overreach that gets between a parent, their child, and their doctor making the right decisions for them.
22 states now have some sort of gender-affirming ban in place for youth. Several states have made moves to introduce bans on folks up to 25. There are state legislatures across the country who are conservative and have pledged to ban gender-affirming care entirely for all people. As both practicing physicians, what do you say, what do you wish that the parents or relatives of trans youth knew about gender-affirming care?
Well, first, you are entirely correct with those states that are taking those legislative overreaches. And as Jesse said, getting in between the relationship between a physician and the medical providers and their patient, the young person, and their family. And I think that that is egregious. I think that, we talk a lot in public health about the social determinants of health, the aspects of our society that impact our health, but it's not necessarily in terms of medical care. So that would include transportation, that would include housing, that would include economic opportunity, education, nutrition, all of the housing, all of those different things. So right now, the political and legal environment of the state that you live in is itself a social determinant of health. So you can live in Colorado, as was talked about before, and have access to gender-affirming care and the young person and their family are supported and get to go to excellent clinics and children's hospitals. And then you can be on almost all of their surrounding states except for New Mexico. And you can't get that care. So the state that you live in is itself now a social determinant of health. And so, I think that it's critically important for the young people and their families to know that they do have the support of the President of the United States. They have the support of the First Lady, who was here yesterday. They have the support of the Vice President of the United States. They have support of Secretary of Health and Human Services, Secretary Becerra. All of the administration strongly support the LGBTQI+ community. They support, in particularly, vulnerable transgender and non-binary youth and their families, and they will continue that support and continue to fight every day to help us and to make sure that our families are accepted in every state across the country.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. In a lot of healthcare conversations, you hear this language about the social determinants of health, where people live, their housing access, food security, whether they have access to healthcare, and those are critical drivers. The challenge for our communities and our families is that stigma is a social determinant of health. And stigma isn't dangerous just because it's easy for people to let it get in the way of relationships. It's easy for stigma to cause discrimination. Stigma is a problem because when you live in a community where there's stigma about who you are, whatever identity it is that's causing it, that stress that a lot of minoritized communities feel actually causes harm. And we know that. We know that there's biology behind this, and we know that there is data that describes if you live in a state where the policy environment is not supportive of you as an individual, you do worse off. You live sicker and you die younger, and we need to fight back against that.
Absolutely. You know, it's worth mentioning that, I mean, you brought up the environmental factors as well. You know, housing discrimination still exists for LGBTQ people in 29 states. In 29 states, if you are LGBTQ and you want to rent an apartment or buy a home, and the landlord or property owner says they don't want to rent or sell to you, then there's really no legal recourse against that right now. That's why we need to pass the Equality Act so that we can eliminate that completely. Such a good point. We live in an era defined by misinformation and disinformation across the board on so many different issues, but specifically on LGBTQ issues and specifically in the past 2 years. How has that affected the relationship between doctor and patient? And what are ways that physicians and patients can work toward bridging that gap, where it does exist, that is?
Well, unfortunately, some of the worst, most dangerous voices have an MD behind their name, and we just need to acknowledge that. And there is a Surgeon General in a state who's giving out bad advice. Some of you know that about vaccinations and other things. Trust has eroded in institutions, CDC, FDA, but also in professionals, healthcare institutions. The good news is most people still trust their doctor. And so that is a really, really important foundational relationship that we need to lean on as we're trying to keep all people across America healthy. And I always tell people, if you're in doubt, if you're reading things online, you ought to ask your doctor, because that's a place where you should be able to get advice that you can count on, that is reliable, and they'll point you in the right direction. And I will tell you, I know it's hard, because I get these calls in my office every week from families who have been turned away, from families who have been told things along the lines of, we can't take care of you, we won't take care of you, we don't know how to take care of you. And it doesn't really matter which version of that it is. When you are trying to get help, you're trying to access care for yourself or your children, and you're being turned away. And my message that I'd like to share with all of you is that no matter what, there is somebody out there who will help, and the American Medical Association fully has all of your backs.
Well, you all are entirely correct. There was significant misinformation about healthcare before the COVID-19 pandemic. For example, as Jesse was talking about in terms of the safety and effectiveness of childhood vaccines, I'm a pediatrician. And we know that the childhood vaccinations are safe and effective, and they're absolutely essential to protect children from polio, to protect children from other very serious childhood diseases. All that has been exacerbated during the COVID-19 pandemic, where there has been so much misinformation and disinformation. Again, about vaccinations, childhood vaccinations, but also about our safe and effective COVID-19 vaccinations. And the CDC director is out on the road right now talking about the importance of everyone getting their COVID-19 vaccination, their booster, and to get the flu shot, and for seniors like me, to get an RSV shot, and to make sure that people get protected for the infections that are coming. Well, that same disinformation, misinformation effect has been in terms of the LGBTQI+ community broadly, but especially about transgender medicine, especially about gender affirming care. Again, and the providers that provide that care, physicians and other providers, again, at children's hospitals and other hospitals and expert clinics across the country. So I'll give you an example. I'm a pediatrician. If your child has a high fever and very bad cough and they're very sick, you would take your child to your pediatrician or your family physician. If your child has a severe asthma, you might be referred to a pediatric pulmonologist, a pediatric lung specialist. If your child has a heart condition, your child would be referred to a pediatric cardiologist, a pediatric heart specialist. If your child has severe diabetes, they would be referred to a pediatric endocrinologist. If they're depressed, they might be referred to a pediatric psychiatrist or psychologist. And if they're transgender, then you're going to call your state representative? No. Then you would be referred by your pediatrician or family physician to a gender clinic, often at the children's hospital, to be evaluated by a specialist, might be adolescent medicine or pediatric endocrinology and a child psychologist and psychiatrist, and get the expert care that they need as they would if they had diabetes, depression, heart disease, or lung disease.
Yeah. I will say, coming sort of out of COVID into this next phase of the world, the lasting legacy of the pandemic is misinformation, and it is a huge challenge. There's a lot of work that health professionals, the government need to do, but there's something that all of you can do. And there's something that all of you can do, which is turn up the volume to 11 and make sure that we push credible messages out there that actually hold up the facts and hold up the science when it comes to our community.
Absolutely. Yeah, please. I feel like I'm in spaces all the time with well-meaning folks who really want to do right by others, but they're usually, like myself, operating on typically a 6th grade, 7th grade understanding of biology, right? That's when most of us stop studying biology, most of us. And they have a very basic understanding of it, but it feels so real, the slogan of men are men, women are women, why are we complicating this? Some people are intimidated by it, the idea of gender affirming care. When you look at the myths out there about specifically gender affirming care for children, what do you notice about it? What are the ones that you feel that you are debunking the most often?
So I think that you're correct, and I think that we all need to. So in the federal government and physicians through the AMA and other professional organizations, and with all of you, we need to educate the public about the truth about LGBTQI+ youth in general, and particularly transgender and non-binary youth. And I think it is really incumbent on us to do that. We will continue to do that, as I said, from the president, the vice president, the secretary, myself, and others at a federal level. And we go to state to state to state, whether it's New York, Massachusetts, and California, or whether it's Texas and Florida and Missouri and Tennessee, and continue to make that argument. And my doing that is absolutely necessary, but it's not sufficient. And so we need physicians, and I congratulate the AMA and the American Academy of Pediatrics and others for speaking out, but we need other medical professionals, and we need all of you to work at the local and state level, and especially at the local level, teacher by teacher. County commissioner by county commissioner, superintendent by superintendent, to educate them about all of our collective humanity and about the medical issues and the public health issues that we've been talking about, and to educate them. And I think that a lot of what we're seeing is based on fear.
Yes.
You know, I think people fear what they don't understand. And so I think it's really incumbent upon us to educate them so they don't fear. So I'll quote a wise sage, Yoda from Star Wars. Not Baby Yoda, that's different. This is the original Yoda from Star Wars, is that fear is the path to the dark side. Fear leads to anger, anger leads to hate, and hate leads to suffering. So I guess we all need to channel Yoda and Star Wars and educate the public about all of our collective humanity.
That's that.
And we should never fear education, and laws that ban books,
That's right,
prohibit us from saying words like gay are crazy.
Yes.
And we shouldn't allow those things to persist. We should require that we never back down from wanting to educate ourselves, our families, our communities. And again, all of you can play such an important role in this because all of you have the capacity to bring people along who may have a misperception about what's happening, who may have an opportunity to have a change of heart through the relationships, the connections, and the community that you can create through your chapters and your work in your homes.
So I want to make a point about that in terms of the Don't Say Gay bills and how dangerous they are, that young people do not feel safe talking to their teacher or their principal or their guidance counselor. So there's and this outlines how critically important it is that you're here, and the work that you do, the advocacy that you all do at PFLAG, and PFLAG rules, right? PFLAG rules. So there's a study from the Trevor Project that talks about depression and anxiety and suicidal thoughts and even suicidal actions from LGBTQI+ young people. That if a young person has one supportive adult in their lives, one supportive adult, often a parent or another family member, like in this room, but it might not be. Maybe it's a teacher. Maybe it's a coach or a guidance counselor. One supportive adult, they have a significantly lower chance of thinking about or attempting suicide. One supportive adult, and that's all of you, supportive adult. But what if it's a teacher, but they can't tell their teacher? And that's the danger of those laws.
Oh, that's so well said. That's very well said. Admiral Levine, we're going to be at Thanksgiving tables next month with the family that we love, even if we disagree with them sometimes. And, you know, we might have a conservative brother-in-law who says, you know, well, I think it's wrong for kids to decide what gender they are. I think that, you know, we are giving way to kids being mutilated through surgery. How do folks respond to that and dispel these myths and that kind of propaganda during those conversations after Thanksgiving?
Well, it's very hard.
Yeah.
And, you know, you might be successful because maybe they're coming from a place of fear and need education, and you might not be successful, and you should realize that. But I think if they're open to listening, and you'll have to kind of judge that, if they're open to listening, I think that the message that Jesse talked about is that this is an issue for the young person to talk to their family about, to talk to their doctor about, or other medical professional, their doctor. And why is the state legislature getting involved with that? And they don't, if it's diabetes or heart disease. And so, or other hormone conditions, if it's diabetes and low and high thyroid disease or something like that. And so why is the legislature and the governor in those states that you talked about contradicting and getting involved where this is before a young person, their family, and their doctor and their clinic. And it's really a personal family decision, and it's not a political decision. maybe they could understand that.
I have to say, because I've got them. You know, we all have that crazy family member out there. And my 4-year-old's in the back, so I'm not going to mention any names because he will undoubtedly repeat them when we get home. Thank you, Ethan. But we have to embrace them with love. And I would encourage us, as hard as it is, when we have those difficult, uncomfortable conversations, to wrap our arms around our friends and family members who are coming at these issues from a different place, and recognize that there is a humanity there, and hopefully that we can find an opportunity to see eye to eye and create alignment and create some hope for moving forward. But that doesn't happen if we shut people out. It doesn't happen if we push people aside. And so as hard as it is, I would just encourage everybody to take that perspective.
Dr. Ehrenfeld, what, oh, yes, please, clap, yes. Dr. Ehrenfeld, what role is the AMA playing in these legal challenges to gender-affirming care in these states?
We are very active. So the AMA, for those of you who don't know about us, we have about 1,200 folks who work for us. The most employees are in Chicago. We've got about 100 here in DC. And one of the most impactful, effective, but least known units is our litigation center, the lawyers. Are there any lawyers here? Yeah, you know how much love you get. We have joined with many other like-minded groups. American Academy of Pediatrics has been an important one in filing amicus briefs, Arkansas, Alabama, Florida, many other places, talking about the harms when legislative bans come in to dictate how medical care is practiced. And we've had some success. So the U.S. District Eastern Court in Arkansas ruled in 2021 that a state law banning gender-affirming care was unconstitutional. Officials could not enforce it because it violated the 14th Amendment's Equal Protection Clause, due process, as well as physicians' First Amendment rights to actually talk openly with their patients about evidence and science. So we continue to write letters to governors, legislatures, opposing restrictions. We're active in the courts, and we will stand in every place that we can to make sure that science prevails.
And just as a quick follow-up to this, is there anything that the community at large and allies could be doing to help the AMA in that mission?
Certainly, I think you know, we are a nonpartisan organization. There are obviously partisan advocacy organizations out there, and I think all of you can change hearts and minds, right? By having conversations with your legislatures, fine, but it doesn't have to be. It can be your friends out in the community who may not have a direct connection. We know that public perception around LGBT people, gender-affirming care, same-sex marriage, pick your piece of it, those public perceptions change when you know someone who is in the community. Well, we can only help educate those in the community if we're out there having those conversations.
Yeah. Admiral Levine, what can families and loved ones do to help trans non-binary youth have access to the health care they need? What would be your advice to folks who are kind of just approaching this from a brand new standpoint, don't really know where to start, and kind of need guidance?
I think that first, to do what you are doing by being here and supporting your own loved ones and supporting your own families is critically important. And I would agree with Jesse that talking with friends and neighbors, and I had mentioned talking, if you feel comfortable, talking locally to teachers and school board members and county commissioners and just others in your local community, if possible, advocating in the state legislatures, et cetera. I think that is all absolutely critical. And I think, you know, we have a strong and resilient community. You know, we are facing significant challenges. We were talking about, we were also talking about some of the challenges that our communities have faced before. And some of those have been described, whether it was, you know, way back in the 70s, but through 80s and 90s. And, you know, we have made so much progress. And again, we have a president and a vice president administration that love and support us. And so we have a lot going in our favor, but we certainly have difficulties and challenges. So I think that we need to show our strength, to show our resilience, and to take what Jesse was saying. I mean, we're a community that responds to hate with love. Our community responds to hate with love, and I think that working together, we will be successful. Now, I'm a positive and optimistic person. I don't know if he gets that. I'm a positive and optimistic person, and I think that working with all of you and working together, we will be successful, and so we have to take that strength, that positivity, and that optimism and go out there.
Yeah. And I would, I would just add, I have a lot of hope too. Because I have seen how organizations can change. Look, the AMA is 176 years old. It was founded in 1847. It was not always very friendly to people like me, to people in your families. 30, 40, whatever years ago, I couldn't have been an AMA member because I'm gay. And yet here we are. All these years later, with an organization that is fully embraced diversity, has fully embraced the LGBT community, has fully put our policies forward to follow the evidence as the evidence has changed, has opposed conversion therapy, has supported gender-affirming care, has stood up for science. We got rid of the FDA ban on blood donation for same-sex couples. And at the end of September, my husband and I had the opportunity to give blood together for the first time in our lives. So we can get there, but it just requires us to not give up hope.
Absolutely.
You both are multi-talented. I mean, you're not just medical experts, but you're also very good at communications. You know exactly how to talk about these issues, often in scenarios where you're getting disinformation thrown at you on a constant basis. Are there moments when you see an anti-LGBTQ public figure or lawmaker or whomever say something about LGBTQ plus healthcare and you want to just throw your shoe at the television? And I ask that because you're both so good at communicating these things, and I would love for the folks here just to get some pointers on how to fight back against that disinformation in a compelling, precise way.
So actually, what I have always found is my clinical training as a pediatrician has always been very helpful. So, we are trained through medical school and our residency program that when we are in the hospital or the emergency department or in the clinic and we're seeing a very sick child and their family, and you have to take whatever emotions come up and put them aside to compartmentalize them, and then treat the patient and the family in front of you. And so that's what I do. So when I am at a Senate confirmation hearing or other challenging situations, whether it might be at Congress or it might be in a state, and I am getting pushback, I am able to, and practice with time, to compartmentalize my feelings and then deal from a communications point of view with what I have to do. Also, I mean, the more pushback that I get, then the more I want to advocate for our community and for your kids. So the more pushback I get, the more I go out there, and that's what I do.
And do well.
Thank you.
I tell you, I take a lot of deep breaths these days. Last month, I was at an oversight hearing testifying in Congress on behalf of the AMA, and I got asked a question out of left field because it was completely off topic about the biology of men and women. Totally inappropriate, totally unrelated. And all it made me want to do was go back and figure out where that congressperson was from and try to create the change that we all need to see in the world.
That was beautifully done, man. Can I get in some more esoteric medical knowledge? Is that okay for a second?
Sure.
Just because this is such a great opportunity. Puberty blockers are so misunderstood. And, obviously I did not go through transition in adolescence or childhood, and the amount of knowledge that you uncover when you're looking into this is just astonishing to me. But non-trans kids were using puberty blockers, cisgender children were using puberty blockers decades before trans children were being prescribed puberty blockers for, things like adolescent or advanced adolescent onset or different medical conditions other than gender dysphoria. What do y'all wish folks knew about puberty blockers, given just how much disinformation is being put out into the bloodstream by anti-LGBTQ lawmakers?
So there's a lot of misinformation about puberty blockers and a lot of other drugs out there. And unfortunately, there's something very dangerous going on, which is there's an attack on the approval and use of these medications, actually at the very foundational level, which is through the FDA. And the suit that's going on right now is actually about mifepristone, which is used for abortion. And what's happened is a couple of plaintiffs who have never prescribed the drug are arguing that 23 years ago, the FDA didn't have the right process in place to approve this medication that's been used for 2 decades. The dangerous part of this is that if, and this is going to go to the Supreme Court, if the Supreme Court decides that the FDA regulatory process for how we approve drugs and medications and biologics in this country doesn't work or isn't appropriate, it will cause chaos, because there is a whole list of other medications, puberty blockers included, that will suddenly be challenged through the same kinds of approaches. And so we ought to let science speak for itself. We need to have trust and confidence in our regulators. And I do believe that the FDA has a very good process for bringing products to marketplace. And there's somebody who might speak to that as well. Sure. But certainly we'll see how this all plays out. And it certainly can be problematic.
Well, I would certainly agree with that, and the administration is strongly supportive of the regulatory processes of the FDA, the work of the NIH and the CDC, and it would be chaos if the decision goes forward against the FDA. In terms of puberty blockers, so. You are correct. Puberty blockers have been used for a long time. They're used for a condition called precocious puberty or early puberty, children who go through puberty, starting puberty at 4, 5, or 6 years of age. And there are some specific hormonal imbalances that lead to that. And one of the dangers of that is that they'll have their growth spurt at 6, and then they'll be very short. And so the idea is to block puberty and then let puberty go on at the time. And so there was a protocol developed, first actually in the Netherlands, probably 15 to 20 years ago, where transgender children could get puberty blockers as they continue to be with their family and to work with their therapist and their physician, and then block puberty so they don't go through the wrong puberty that is inconsistent with their gender identity. I've been misquoted about this issue, so I'm going to be very careful. And then at the right time, of course, with their family and their doctor and their therapist and the young person to decide to get contra-hormone therapy and to go through a puberty consistent with their gender identity. That process and that protocol started to be used in the United States, first at Boston Children's Hospital and Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, and then has expanded to many, many children's hospitals, if they live in states that allow it now, and other expert LGBTQ plus clinics to do that. Now, the protocol has advanced and is innovated over the last 15 to 20 years, as all medical care does. The medical care for diabetes is not the same as it was 15 or 20 years ago. The medical care for almost anything is not the same as it was 15 or 20 years ago, because we have continual research done at those children's hospitals in the United States and throughout the world, which continue to refine and adjust protocols so that they can stay up to date, as it has for transgender medicine. And then physicians and medical professionals who see the children, of course, individualize that with the advice and consent of their families, individualize it to the individual child based upon those protocols. So the puberty blockers have advanced in terms of their administration and the type of different puberty blockers, but that's how that developed.
Thank you for that cohesive answer. That was perfect. Dr. Ehrenfeld, did you have anything to add to that?
No, just it's hard because the science does evolve, and we will always stand up for the science. And this has been hard during COVID because there was a moment where we knew nothing about this new novel disease, and we're trying to put out the best information, the best evidence, the best recommendations, and it changed. And that led to some real communications challenges during the pandemic about what we were asking people to do to keep themselves and their families safe. And unfortunately, we still have some of these communications challenges around much of the work that goes into what's referred to as gender affirming care.
And that is why the American Medical Association, and thank you, and the American Academy of Pediatrics, and the Endocrine Society, the Pediatric Endocrine Society, the Society for Adolescent Health and Medicine, the American Psychiatric Association, the American Psychological Association, and the Association of Child and Adolescent Psychiatrists and more support evidence-based standard of care treatment for transgender youth and adults.
Yes. Absolutely. By the way, let me just tell you, sometimes I will be in a debate space with well-meaning conservatives who want to present what they believe is credible scientific evidence. Then I start listing all these organizations that have clearly come out in support of gender-affirming care, and they just lose their minds. Because they don't know. No one tells them this. And then when they start learning about it and see that every major medical authority in the US, and really just about every major medical authority around the world, including the American Medical Association, have clearly come out in support of gender-affirming care, and it just it really knocks them sideways because they didn't know. So I do want to ask about this. There's been this push by anti-trans activists to claim that European countries or European medical authorities are reevaluating their approaches to gender-affirming care for youth and adolescents. How can we dispel this myth that means that they are rejecting gender-affirming care for youth and adolescents? Have y'all seen this, by the way?
Yeah, I haven't been following what's going on in Europe pretty closely, but I'll tell you, we evaluate our policies all the time because we want to make sure that whatever the science and evidence it is, we're holding it up. We shouldn't be afraid of that. I think what I hear as a part of this sort of question is that gets parroted is, well, the evidence is weak. There's not good evidence for this or that or whatever. Well, I'll tell you, there's a lot of medical practice that I live by every day. I walk into the operating room to take care of patients. I'm an anesthesiologist, by the way. I put people to sleep and I wake them up. There's a lot that I do that has pretty weak evidence behind it. Has anyone had a pulse oximeter on their finger to measure their blood oxygen level? Guess what? There is no prospective randomized controlled trial to say that having a pulse ox during surgery is safe and effective. But I would never take a patient to the operating room without a pulse ox. Yeah. So I think there is good evidence for much of what we do. There's strong evidence for smaller pieces. We need more evidence. We need more research. We will always try to advocate for that. But based on what we have today, we have a clear policy that makes sense, which is to support these practices.
So I think that there are two considerations, one of which is exactly what Jesse said, is that there have been, reevaluations and looking at evidence. And we want people to always evaluate the evidence, to always use as much as possible evidence-based care in our medical protocols. And we continue to study it. And then that medical care continues to evolve and change. And that's how medicine works. And it's no different whether it is diabetes or it is transgender medicine. There are other countries where it's been very political. So there are other, particularly East European countries, where it's been a very political issue. And so you have to kind of look at both.
Yeah, that's a great answer. Yeah. All the research done on the experiences of LGBTQ people in healthcare spaces has demonstrated that most LGBTQIA+ people experience some form of discrimination. Some of it's less severe, some of it is more severe. Dr. Ehrenfeld, when you look at folks who do experience that discrimination, what would be what is the approach of the AMA to educating doctors who may not be inclined, I suppose, is the nice way to put it, to be more affirming and to be more ethical and respectful toward LGBTQ patients in these spaces?
Yeah, it's a big focus for a lot of our work. And what I'll say is there's two aspects to this. There is a specific competency, there's specific expertise that we need to make sure that every physician in America has, right? Like, you know, how do you keep people healthy and safe and follow protocols and evidence and those kinds of things? We're starting to see in our medical education training programs in medical school and graduate medical education, which is when people do their residencies and fellowships and get subspecialty education, we're starting to see more and more education that makes sure that people who are coming into the workforce have a basic understanding of what those things are. But having that competency, having that expertise is different than being welcoming. And in my book, everybody ought to be welcoming, whether you have the expertise or not. And so we have clear policy that prohibits discrimination. And what I tell people is, look, if you have it in your heart of hearts, you just can't take care of the person in front of you for whatever reason it is, you ought to send them to see somebody else.
Yeah, all said.
Well, I'm such an enormous fan of diversity. I think diversity in all of its myriad and wonderful aspects in our country, the fabric and tapestry of our country is so important. And it's so important for every organization, whether that is organized medicine and medical organizations, whether that's a hospital or a college or government or a business. So whatever organization you're talking about, diversity brings in all sorts of different experiences and different cultures and different perceptions, and it enhances any organization. So I think that we all need, I know diversity, equity, and inclusion have become swear words right now, but I believe in actually DEIA is in terms of diversity, equity, inclusion, and ableism. And I think that it's just so important for us to advocate for that. And that includes sexual and gender minorities and includes the LGBTQI+ community.
And I will say, you know, there was a Supreme Court ruling this summer that basically has ended affirmative action in higher education, getting to medical school. The AMA opposed that. We filed amicus briefs along with many other groups because we believe in equity. But the foundational reason that we stood up against that decision was that when we have diverse healthcare teams, patients do better. And for us, it's about patients and patient outcomes. We know that when we have diversity in medicine, people get better care. They see different perspectives. Our care systems are more accommodating. And so this is going to be an ongoing challenge. Obviously, it is a subject of national debate, and people have very strong feelings about the process of affirmative action and what it means. But at the end of the day, we are committed to making sure that we have diverse care teams that can take care of diverse communities.
Yes. Admiral Levine. Admiral Levine, I don't think you would be surprised to find out that so many of us in the trans community look up to you as just such a solid, consistent, I would say empowering public figure for so many of us. When President Biden nominated you, it was a very strange moment for me because, you know, I knew that President Biden supported trans rights. He has for a long time, by the way. President Biden has been a supporter of trans rights for a very, very long time. Most people don't know this. I've talked to reporters who don't know this, but he's been supporting trans rights way, way before it was cool. That's for sure. Really. And by the way, so has Vice President Harris. Like they've both been just consistently supported, both of them. What gives you hope in this moment?
So again, I'm a positive and optimistic person, and I think that hope is so important, and we have such a strong and resilient community. So what gives me hope are the people in this room. You all give me hope, and your children give me hope. Children and teenagers, and hope for the future, because they are all of our futures. That's what gives me hope.
Okay. Yeah. And Dr. Ehrenfeld, as a trailblazer yourself, I mean, my goodness, I cannot imagine just the weight of the world is on your shoulders right now as the first openly gay lead of, I would say, the preeminent medical authority in the United States, really. What gives you hope in this moment, sir?
Well, we've got a healthcare system in crisis, record burnout, you know, legislators and insurance companies, for that matter, telling us what we can and can't do. And it's pretty deflating. But every time I walk into the hospital and I put on my scrubs, my colleagues continue to show up because they're there to take care of people, to heal and to do the right thing. And in spite of all of the challenges, all of the frustrations, all of the places now where you have to call the attorney to figure out what you can and can't do on these socially challenging and charged issues, people still day in and day out come to do what we went to medical school to do, which is to keep people healthy.
Thank goodness for that. Folks, it has been my great honor today to be in conversation with Admiral Rachel Levine and Dr. Jesse Ehrenfeld. Please give them a round of applause.
Well, and thank you for that. Let's give Charlotte a round of applause. And for those of you in the back who can't see, I wore my special rainbow socks today to try to keep up with the
Hold it back up. Hold it back
attire.
up. Hold it back up.
There it is. And I'm going to hold on to Admiral here. First time I've ever held on to a 4-star on a stage. But listen, when my son and I were getting ready for this trip, and he's in the back corner there, I told him he would be in a room full of parents who inspire me, and you have all not let me down. So thank you for that.
His son is so cute, by the way. I mean, just adorable. Thank you all so much. Thank you.